And so the tipping point with anything, you know, you can argue that no baby is like not unfortunate. And so like in the detoxification, if a baby's detoxing, like it comes down to the chemtrail of the digestion tract and the healthy mother. How healthy was she? And the argument could be the same with LGBT. When is enough satisfied? And then it just turns into like yourself getting satisfied, and that is never a satisfaction, especially when you're never perfect. So then one more bad logic, this is terrible. If you were to get so fond of a tombstone because that was the last thing that you saw that's related to the person that you really liked, and so to say like death's tombstone, to a normal person, they don't need to hear the word death. They already know that the tombstone is acclimated with it. But the more that you're dressing it up with like window dressing, you can talk about that all day. But the key to the key to the key would be more of like an illegal stance. How did the person get to that location? If you really like a tombstone, maybe you're into the type of rock it is. Let's talk about that, or the engraving of the grave's tombstone. Was it chiseled? Despite there being as many humans alive on this planet than there ever has been, if you make it increasingly difficult for humans to exist, you know, being alive but then selling out to something that is worth your entire life but then is just meaningless, then it's a play on you beholding the world at large and then cataclysmically defining the quality of life as an ethics board is stuck on the scum of the earth. And so if you're telling someone what safe is, and then whenever it looks bad, as though you're being overprotective, and you'd say, well, this is in a transition. And then with goals of safety, having measures be the world at large, and then combine that with down into the individual of being an individual without having charge, and then when charge is given, having that charge be like randomized within emotions, because like with emotion you have like the bad decisions when it's called like playing with emotions. Like you can't really make great decisions when you're feeling emotional, and so that's when odd things can occur, such as the bulk of gray matter being in between a transition and a list of instruction, and the measure being all three in one, would be you being over emotional about something other than those three, so that you think that your emotion is the three. And so like everyone wants love and peace, but to get emotional about it so much that you make wrong decisions is like kind of how you give away your liberty for like something that is not worth your liberty. If you're saying like an anthill is so spectacular, how you can just look at it and say, wow, that's a great mound, and then you just cherish the mound without knowing that underneath the mound is a whole bunch of caves, and these caves invertedly are just like a giant castle. And so admiring the mound and not the castle is a perfect representation of short range over a long shot. Isotope This is like a wheelbarrow, but it's with a seesaw. Really interesting how much the centerpiece of it would enact as a wheelbarrow if it was taken out from either end. But back to a carbon-12 isotope, that's its middle board of Avogadro's number if you're talking in atoms to a mole. And so that's a scale of a range. I said there's like a short range for a long shot. You know, someone born to take long shots like a crack baby. It's gonna have to detoxify immediately, and that's a long shot of its quality of life. But what was the domain from the range? This is what is even more mucked up in Avogadro's number with these scalings. The particles of the atoms are all together from the relative weight of the hydrogen atom being 1 gram. Just because the hydrogen is the most abundant element in the universe, let's just choose it to go off with how many particles we think could be a representation of Avogadro's number to define the entire chemical outlook of what we think constituents are. And Avogadro's number isn't as precise as particle accelerators, you know, the ones that read the collision of particles with taking into constraints the general relativity of them at the highest degrees, you know, so that they're whipping up so much energy about them, it's changing the mass of the environment. But just like a wheelbarrow that has been turned into a teeter-totter, the center is where the particle would be, so you can read before it hits and after it hits. And you're getting the estimate for the particle in its most precise weight and how it is in effect with another particle that it runs into. So it's thereby reading what they can't read on the transistors with the node bridge structure, trying to read just one node, but having to send a frequency through the bridge. You can never do that because the other node right next to it or within its vicinity has its value changed by the frequency in order to get it charged in the first place, and in order to read the difference of the exchange in the second place. So unlike Avogadro's number, who has, you know, not too fine scales of just some, when it says general, it means like within a grain of salt, you know, take it with a grain of salt if it's general. It can be manipulated by outside sourcing because that's how it's able to have a constant. And so within general relativity of just a particle to the atom is kind of hearsay because the particles have different sizes and then they're at different frequencies of excitation, which would give them different weights as well. And so that's how a scale of a whistle and a synthesizer hitting up the notes are more accurate on paper than Avogadro's number. And so one more with the synchronicity of what electricity does is inside of a nodal structure an electric component, the switches need to get hit, but then with the transistors inside the switches, if you're trying to read what two are doing and then you just get one that's hit too hard, the one that is hit too hard is going to have a different frequency than the one that is getting hit initially, and so it would read different. And so this is what would be a misfire, but it wouldn't be because it's out of tune. It would be because of the outlet probably needed a circuit breaker because it had a misfire inside of its electric component. And so the circuitry would crap out, as opposed to missing the right air pressure on a whistle, or if the whistle is broken. So these are two telltale signs of what could be wrong with instrumentationry, as opposed to Avogadro's number. If you're going by that, you're going to have these other things that are wrong, such as an ethics board getting in the middle of what the quantitative estimates are, you know, if they mix them up with the quantitative estimates. So you've got to know, is it one or the other when there's any study of a chemical construct